Well, hi there.
Good morning.
Welcome back to another comprehensive wrap of all the news stories that have dominated headlines this week. I'm Georgie Tunny.
I'm James Law.
And this is Flash Drive. J-Law, what a week.
Yeah. It's just non-stop.
Non-stop. And I know for the last few episodes we've been promising some good news stories because things have been a bit bleak. Things have been a bit grim. And while I can't say we've totally nailed that brief, we are going to be jumping into the nonsensical idea, and whoever it was, to make a phallic graphic the logo for the Prime Minister and Cabinet's Women's Network initiative. We weren't the only two that, this caught our eye.
I wasn't trying to be salacious at all when I first saw it, but I saw boobs, balls and a penis.
Tell us what you really think, Darren.
Yeah. So that was Darren Hinch talking to Sunrise this morning about this new logo that was developed for the Women's Network. We're going to go into some more detail about that coming up soon because a bit of fun.
We need it.
Bit of fun in some dark times. And coming up, we are going to chat the latest developments from Ukraine. But first, a firm battleground has been drawn. It's been underlined ahead of the federal budget and, of course, the federal election, and that is the cost of living.
It's going to be a tough next 10 years. It's going to be a tough next 3 years. And you need a government that knows how to keep our economy in good, strong shape. Not just talks about it, one that's actually done it.
J-Law, it's hardly an optimistic message, I guess, heading into the election. I think what we are now seeing is the Prime Minister and the Coalition being quite realistic about where things stand when it comes to the cost of living, what Aussies can expect over the next 10 years, what they can expect over the next 3 years. And I think that the Labor Party is also following suit. Do you agree?
Yeah, look, so that was the Prime Minister speaking last night at the pub test that Sky News aired.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to hear him come out that boldly and just say the next 10 years are going to suck for your hip pocket. Right?
Basically, right? And at a time when we're all like feeling the weight of, the geopolitical situation, the flooding disaster. When we say we've been going through some bleak times, it has been pretty bleak. So then to have it confirmed with an exclamation point,
right,
that it's going to be ongoing.
I mean, props for him to being upfront about it. Yeah. But look, it's going to be an interesting dynamic for the election, right? Because usually the Coalition are the ones out there saying we're the best managers of the economy, but they've kind of lost some skin in that game because they've had to spend so much through the pandemic, hand back people's money back to them to get us through. It was 100% the right thing to do in those bleak times. However, it does put them on the back foot. We've got this massive budget deficit, so they can't go out there and say that we're the best, people when it comes to spending your money because we're behind. So it's a really interesting dynamic where for once they're kind of not on the most steady ground in terms of managing the budget. And with the economy looking the way it is, it's a little bit harder an argument to prosecute than normal. Well,
and also because we're 3 weeks or so out now from the federal budget, obviously the timing of that usually takes, a lot of the focus away from the news agenda. Everyday Aussies, I feel like they look at it, but they're probably not looking at it too closely. Do you think that the federal budget has a direct influence on the way people vote?
I think that they care about things like the budget bottom line. Yeah. They certainly care about how much tax they're going to pay.
Yes.
And the Coalition has signalled that it's not really interested in making, obviously it's not the party of, making people pay higher taxes. So it's not going to want to unwind some of these taxes that it's given away, the lower middle income tax offset, things like that. It's made clear that it's not going to ditch those.
No.
Because you don't want to go into an election saying you're going to have to pay more tax.
No. But the interesting thing is as well, they've definitely not said that you can expect any further tax cuts or something. They're saying that it's really important how the tax cuts they've previously introduced are because it's saving households like $50 or whatever it is a week. But now you add in the cost of living, everything's getting higher. I'm pretty sure on average, like petrol's going to cost most families $50 extra a week.
Yeah, that's rough, isn't it? And there's sort of been a lot about petrol in the most recent days. So what we're at like $2.20 now or so, and they're saying that it's going to go up to $2.50, which is rough. I mean, it's really interesting.
Do you remember when, like, growing up, and you would go to the servo and you'd be in the back seat, parents driving, and you're going past the servo, 67 cents? Do you remember that?
Wow,
what a time!
It was back when you could buy houses for I don't know, $200,000, crazy.
Yeah, I know. It's just, but we've been getting warned that maybe $2.20 right now could rise to as high as $2.50 a litre, really. And we're being told that's largely due to one reason, and one reason in particular.
Understand that what's driving the cost of petrol higher is the war in Europe, the disruptions caused by Russia's outrageous attacks on Ukraine, and the impact that's having on global markets, and that this is a global problem, not a specifically Australian problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this has given rise to a bit of pressure being put on Scott Morrison to cut the dreaded fuel excise tax. Not everyone thinks this is a good idea, though. Here's the NRMA representative, Peter Curry.
Of course, we are seeing absolute extreme prices and have for a number of weeks. And we are all desperate to see some cost of living pressure relief for families, and especially at the Bowser. But the fuel excise is meant to be collected from motorists to put that money back into the road network.
So it's interesting, the point he's making, right? So as soon as the prices go up, people are like, well, here's the easy thing, cut the fuel excise tax. But the thing is, what Curry here is arguing is that it shouldn't be attached to like fluctuations in the prices of oil globally, because that money is designed for the road network and new roads and infrastructure and stuff that make driving easier. So if you cut back on that, you're going to cut back on the quality of roads and potentially make your daily commute much worse.
And I guess that they're saying that in terms of if it's going to be an unstable system, if you're making it so that you can pick and choose whenever you're going to have that fuel excise, well, therefore there's going to be times where you aren't going to have a good road and people go, don't worry, I've just got this this whole little kitty here from the fuel excise. We'll just have a look. Oh, negative $4. Like,
exactly.
We can't fix that road type vibe. So I'm not sure, though, that is really relaying or translating to Australian families, because for them right now, they may not be aware of the fuel excise tax. I've got to say that I wasn't completely across it, but I believe it's something like 44 cents really per litre that the government takes and puts that into a fund that is going to be spread out into different infrastructure projects, right? So potentially that's something that Australian families are going to have to become more economically literate in to understand that. But really when it comes down to weekly budgets, I think that people would be, and understandably, pretty quick to just be like, well, whatever, I need to buy this amount of petrol and I have got this amount of funds, which isn't going to let me do that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like people need to drive no matter what. Like it's not really something that you can scrimp on. It's like if you're driving to work, you got to drive. And the other thing, I read an interesting story today that was sort of arguing that the reason why this hurts so much more than other cost pressures is that it's literally on a shining sign, like a glowing neon sign, and you can't escape it, no matter who you are. So it is like a slap in the face.
It is, and usually that sign is like flashing red. So it's just like danger, 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 just so you know you are broke. This is what it is. That's what that means, like every single time. I think another question that I have is about, okay, so this is all happening. It's not looking great for the cost of living. We're being realistic. Everything's getting more expensive. Nothing seems to be getting cheaper at any point on the horizon. And everyone's saying, well, the way to combat that is to increase wages and have this sense of wage growth. Now, we're going to get into our thoughts about that, but I just wanted to get the thoughts of an international entrepreneur about maybe how we can look at increasing people's wages.
I have the best advice for women in business. Get your fucking ass up and work. It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
That's so true.
You have to surround yourself with people that want to work. Have a good work environment where everyone loves what they do, because you have one life. No toxic work environments, and show up and do the work.
Now, that was well-renowned entrepreneur Kim Kardashian, giving her thoughts on how you should be able to achieve what you want in life. And by that, I'm taking that to mean wage growth. So, J-Lo, here's my pitch. I love what I do, working with you at Flash, and then Kim Kardashian just says there, if I love what I do, we work hard, can I get a raise?
It's that simple. All right, where do I sign?
Great. And we've solved it. We've solved it, guys.
Thanks, Kimmy.
Yeah, look, it's one of those things, right, though, in all seriousness, that I don't quite understand how you do, like, raise wages. I'm not sure what that is. Do you know what that is? Or how it can be done?
I'm stepping into territory that I'm not an expert in. But it's got to be about competitive tension between jobs, right? So at the moment, we've got close to full employment because a lot of people from overseas had to go back home during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like everyone's got a job. So you kind of need to be in this position where there's more competition for jobs and that raises wages. But I'm not sure whether Kim... You know, I don't know heaps about this. I don't know whether we should listen to Kim, though.
No, we should. Yeah, we should. Yeah,
okay.
definitely. Take it as gospel.
In all matters.
Yeah, in everything, J-Lo, in everything. The Kardashian way. That's what it is. Okay, time to switch things up now and look to overseas and the devastating conflict that is ongoing in Ukraine. The conflict there is approaching a fourth week with no real end in sight. We've talked previously on this podcast that, you know, it could go on and stretch on not weeks, but months and potentially even years. But J-Lo, with what you've seen over the last 7 days or so, what's particularly stuck out for you in terms of the images and the vision that we've seen and that we've covered?
Well, I think for a lot of people, the most shocking moment was when Russia did an airstrike on that maternity hospital in Mariupol. And there were those horrible pictures of pregnant women being carried out on stretchers. There was that one AP image that, was just ran across the world of the woman on the stretcher, dare I say it, she was sort of bleeding from the abdomen
blood,
while pregnant.
Very graphic.
And then we found out today that she and her baby actually died as a process of that bombing. So pretty shocking. And it shows you just how barbaric Russia is willing to be in this war. You know, it's been shooting apartment blocks indiscriminately, maternity wards, and then like afterwards it says, Russia's response to questions on that was, no, it's fake news, that picture isn't real. And
even at times the Ukrainians are shelling themselves.
Yeah, that was taken over by a terrorist group of Ukrainians. It's all rubbish.
Yeah.
But it shows you just how far they're willing to go in this war and willing to accept civilian casualties no matter what. It's pretty brutal.
Well, also how willing they are in their readiness to perpetuate this denial that they're doing that, right? And the propaganda, I guess, that they are showing to their own citizens and Russians. And interestingly, today we saw an extraordinary anti-war protest. A TV staffer and editor, Marina Ovsyannikova, who stormed into a television studio during a live news bulletin that was being broadcast on Channel 1, which is a Russian state-run TV channel, yelling "Stop the war" and with a placard that said "Don't believe in the propaganda, you're being lied to."
Incredible.
And I think at the time it was during part of a story that the newsreader was reading that was talking about the sanctions that have been, unfairly placed on Russia by the rest of the world. So there is some resistance there. It exists. But again, it's just sort of like highlighting how those images that we're very, very used to seeing aren't really going to be filtered through in Russia. And an update on that, I think now the editor, the TV staffer, she was arrested and is going to be facing charges over endangering Russia and its citizens, essentially. So essentially like treason.
Yeah, you got to worry for her. Yeah.
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 So those were a couple of moments. But then there was a really interesting take as well that has come out of the Ukrainian conflict this week. Elon Musk, the tech billionaire, a little bit cuckoo, but tech billionaire, obviously incredibly smart, has decided that he would like to duel the Russian president Vladimir Putin in a way that potentially could end this war? Like, what? What?
And, via Twitter, right?
Yeah, via Twitter. So I think today in our news flash, on Flash News, how we described it was In today's edition of What the Hell is Happening in the World, Elon Musk is going to challenge Putin to a duel. What?
I could imagine him coming in on a drone or something, drop him at the Kremlin and just be like, here we go. Or get your pistols out.
I know. And the interesting thing too was that after that, obviously, no response from Vladimir Putin. Surprising, really. No response from Vladimir Putin. So then he atted the Kremlin and was like, reply to this fight, basically, like, you should be taking this up. And then the Kremlin has also not responded.
What do you think, I don't understand it. Do you think it is just kind of elaborate internet trolling?
Yes.
He's in that world, which I just don't really understand.
Yes.
It's not especially funny.
No, I think it's one of those head-scratching moments, but he has 77 million followers, right? So maybe it's just, again, keeping the Ukraine-Russia conflict in everyone's thoughts and maybe trending on Twitter.
Sure.
Potentially, best case scenario, because we know that this conflict has no end date right now. So already, given how, the 24-hour news cycle, at the moment it's still at the forefront of so many bulletins here in Australia and around the world. But how long will that last? So if we look at it from that lens, maybe he's trying that. Another lens, he's lost the plot and just, made himself part of it. I don't know.
Attention seeking. I'd probably pay for pay-per-view that. Maybe we could have it exclusively on Flash.
Exclusively
their duel.
On Flash, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Great for the business.
We'll get the exclusive interviews post-duel.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. The other big news that came this week, J-Law, controversial new logo for the Coalition's Women's Network.
Yikes.
It was pulled after I think it lasted not even 24 hours, and then it was scrapped because it was mocked so ruthlessly on social media for looking, I'm trying to say this in a way that won't get us beeped out, but just looking phallic.
Cock and balls?
Great. That's the way we'll say it.
Is that allowed?
Yeah, I think, I'm going to allow it. Yeah, I'm going to allow it. They literally created an image that was meant to represent the Women's Network that looked like a cock and balls. What?
Yeah, I don't know.
How?
And you can, I know how many people this would have gone through. They don't, in government circles, certainly in the Prime Minister and Cabinet, they don't just make these graphic design decisions overnight.
No.
This would have been approved by countless people.
So many people would have seen it. And if you haven't seen it, I'm not quite sure where you've been, but look it up. And I defy anyone to challenge us that it looks like a cock and balls or it looks like a tampon. That's also what we thought. It might look like a tampon.
Yeah.
It looks like a set of breasts as well, zooming off into the future maybe. So that's another potential reading of it. You know what it doesn't look like? A symbol and a logo for a women's network.
Right. And the fact that it's purple. Yeah. It's like, girls like purple.
Oh, suffragettes, woo. It just doesn't make sense. And I'm with you. So many people would have had to look at that. The Women's Network have come out and said that, the Prime Minister did not see it, had nothing to do with it.
Fair
His
enough.
office had nothing to do with it. I don't think anyone believes, that they would have. But just how? They also confirmed that no one externally was consulted. You'd want to hope so. But then we've seen previously when that has happened, the milkshake consent ad.
Oh, God. And what about that one, I think it was the Australian-made logo that looked like, a bursting coronavirus?
Oh, God. Yeah. How is it so hard? I say with absolutely no graphic design training.
Yeah.
So maybe, I feel like though we, with our powers combined and limited graphic design experience, would still be able to not put up a cock and balls.
We know a cock and balls when we see one.
We know it. We bloody well know it. And you know what? Australia does too.
It does.
That's why it's been scrapped.
Proving it this week.
Can't wait to see what they do go with.
Oh, yeah. We'll have to
pressure.
find out what's next.
Yeah. We've reached that time of the podcast, J-Law. We do a quick shout out every week to the platform Flash, for which we both work, because there's so many things that you can be watching on this platform, so many different news sources. What should people be tuning into this week?
Yeah, I think one of the best things that was on the platform this week was Sky News' exclusive pub test with the Prime Minister.
Yes, which we have alluded to in this episode, yes.
Indeed. So that was on Monday night in the Central Coast of New South Wales, which is, one of the battlegrounds for the federal election. So that's why they held it there. It was really interesting. So there was, a room full of voters. I mean, I've got to say they were a sympathetic crowd.
Pro-coalition voters.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Fair, yeah.
So it was a pretty sympathetic crowd for him. But they had some interesting questions. They asked him about the petrol prices that we've been discussing. What are we going to do to have our energy needs met in the future? Lots of really interesting discussion points. I think one of the things that really cut through, though, was what he had to say about Anthony Albanese.
Just because they say it, I'm not pretending to be anyone else. We're still wearing the same glasses. And, sadly, the same suits. And I weigh about the same, and I don't mind a bit of Italian cake either. So I'm happy in my own skin. I'm not pretending to be anyone else. And when you're Prime Minister, you can't pretend to be anyone else. You've got to know who you are, because if you don't know who you are, then how on earth are other people going to know? And I think that's what the choice is at this election.
I'm not pretending to be anyone else.
Subtle, wasn't it?
So subtle. I've not lost any weight. Wow. Do you think that... I think that the way that he's decided to tackle Anthony Albanese by focusing on those changes that the Labor leader has made, I mean, we've discussed it previously, J-Law. It's an election year when the candidates themselves are, getting camera ready. He's got very, very, well-fitted suits now. He's lost about 14 kilograms and seems a lot healthier, seems very happy. So the way that ScoMo has sort of taken him on here, being like, well, he's presenting himself as something that he's not, is interesting. And I don't think a terrible strategy. No,
probably, what they'll be trying to do is plant the seed of doubt in voters' minds about whether Albo can be trusted to run the country.
Yeah.
It's almost like a better the devil you know argument. That's what they're going to be trying to prosecute. It's like... I think that the Prime Minister's office know that he's a little bit on the nose with the voting public, but I think that they want to cast enough doubt on what Albanese's true intentions are. That'll be the sort of line that they continue to play.
It's interesting, right? Because by the same token, yes, you can have that play, which is what they're going for, but also you can make the argument that it sounds like, ew, a fit, healthy, has a lot of stamina politician leading this country. Yuck, who wants that? So there's that as well. And that is what the former opposition leader, Bill Shorten, pretty much said today in defence of Albo.
I think the Prime Minister is threatened by Albo. As for makeovers, I remember Mr Morrison before the last federal election. You know what? He seemed to get a new pair of glasses and he did his best to do a makeover. Albo's match fit. That's what we want. I think that the little green monster's sitting on Mr Morrison's shoulder and he's a bit jealous of Albo.
Little green monster. Little green monster. So that whole exchange for Scott Morrison between Paul Murray, that is on the Flash platform in the pub test. Is there anything else that we should be looking at this week?
Yeah, another really good one is a documentary called Who is Vladimir Putin?
Ooh.
Yeah, I watched that this morning and it really goes right back to his early days and kind of digs into his psychology about who is he, how did he end up in the KGB, and then how did he end up as president, what drives him, what his plans are, what his psychology is. It's really fascinating because he's obviously at front and centre of the world's minds at the moment. So it's interesting to see what makes him tick. So I'd recommend that one as well.
It's also great to be able to see that because we have had so much coverage on, his counterpart in Ukraine being Vladimir Zelensky and his journey towards the presidency. So they've come from very, very different backgrounds. So it is a really, really interesting one.
Interesting. And, I think it's easy to think of Vladimir Putin as an almost cartoonish villain.
Yes.
Just see him as like Kim Jong-un or something and just as a, global bad guy.
Yes.
But this actually digs a bit deeper and lets you know what drives him. And I think it's really interesting to know.
J-Lo, that's it.
We made it.
We made it. Another episode of Flash Drive. And I feel with little bits of snippets of light in this episode. So you're welcome, viewers. We've tried.
We tried.
We've tried to bring some joy and even got Kim Kardashian on the podcast. So, you know.
Let's bring it back.
Let's bring it back. Let's see what we do next week. We are going to be back next week. Chat then. Remember, here at Flash and Flash Drive, it's all about the news you need, how you want, and when you want.
Catch you later, guys.
So if you enjoy the news, who doesn't, and this podcast, who doesn't, and want to learn more about Flash, who doesn't, you can sign up at flashnews.com.au. Flash lets you stream more than 25 news channels in the one place. New customers right now get 14 days free. So start streaming your news today.